At number 10, we have Creepy Log Ride. So this creepy log ride comes out of Beijing Shijingshan Amusement Park. Some people call it fake Disneyland apparently. So the park itself is still in operation, but half of the rides are closed down and there's overgrown vegetation everywhere. Because of that, this log ride feels abandoned, but you can give it a ride yourself. It is pretty eerie though. There are wildflowers and cracked soil on the land around the ride, and all the props and decorations around the track are weathered down. The ride itself is a pretty slow, lazy river water ride, and it's flanked by figurines and other decorations, but honestly it seems like Mother Nature is trying to take over. For me, the creepiest part is the figurines. They have these kangaroos that look like they've seen something that scarred them for life. And all of the animals look like they're just up to no good. And honestly, that's all I can say about that. We're gonna move on. It's kinda creepy, it's just moving so slow. Ugh. At number 9, we have Fantasy Dream Train Ride. So this one is a little more refined, but just wait for it, okay? Fantasy Dream Train Ride is located in Lot World Theme Park in Seoul, South Korea. You start by passing through a clown's mouth and going down a tunnel of light. Already, you start getting Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory kind of vibes. There is slow, cheery music in the background, and the ride enters a dark room with glowing orbs of light that flicker, and this giant lifelike statue of a guy who is speaking over the sounds of crickets or cicadas or some kind of bug. So the music fades out there and it's just you and that giant talking to you. Creepy. Anyways, next is a frog room where high-pitched voices are saying ribbit, which leads to a forest room with these creepy flower things. And so if you think their faces aren't bad enough, when I noticed their mouths moving, I almost jumped out of my chair. These beings' eyes are unmoving, but their mouth bobs up and down just like it's not lifelike at all, but still very cringy. And I didn't mind the bees at the end though, they're just bopping around. But it doesn't end there. There are creepy animals you pass in a town, and then you enter a clown's mouth again to another creepy cheerful room. There is a jelly bean house with mice and a wizard, and then it gets all dark and the music quiets, and then ride goers go back into the hype. It's a lot, honestly. All in all, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the location of a horror movie, because it's just clowny nightmare fuel. Imagine that, just kind of like dark and eerie at night and you're walking through and you bump into something and it's animatronic that goes, "Hi!" No! But moving on to number 8, Jurassic Jungle Boat Ride. So in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, you can even see that there's people outside the ride gathering to watch. But no, wait, those are mannequins. Except for this guy. This guy from My Nightmares. On the ride, you enter through the double wooden doors into a dark cavern. There's a ringing sound and it goes dark. The dino animatronics are lightly lit and come peering at the riders. Animatronics on their own are just creepy, that's my opinion. So this dino that's nodding its head, I don't trust it, okay? I just don't. So this part of the ride that seals the deal is the noise. So the ambiance is haunting, and it's all because of the tech design. There are echoing dinosaur screeches and a low resounding hum with the sounds of nighttime bugs to give you that eerie alone feeling. Then at one point a child is carried away by a pterodactyl too, yeah. And it's slowly without the wings flapping, so it's just gliding through like this. Kind of like a flying squirrel, if you do. It's a pretty long ride too, so if you're up for some creepy dinos, strap in for at least an 8-minute ride. Next, at number 7 is Visa Clown. So this ride isn't quite creepy for the ride itself, but because of the creepy clown, or clowns on it. So at the Aberdeen County Fair, on one of the rides is this creepy looking bugger, and he's holding a child with flashing red eyes, and there are more clowns around the machine. At one point, were clowns like this supposed to be charming?
Scariest ride of all time.
Who would see these faces and think, oh, that's cute for my kid, and the clown's face is just like, no, it's not cute. I'm not outright afraid of clowns in general, no, but this artistic interpretation, just downright creepy, honestly. Plus, with rides at county fairs, you never really know how up to code they are. I fear that, you know? I risk it either way, but you don't really know, I feel. Right? At number 6, we have The Nightmare Experiment. So this ride is in Disney Hong Kong only. It is a Halloween scare house with Disney characters in it. So to name a few that are featured in here, there is the Mad Hatter, Pirates from Pirates in the Caribbean, and mutant toys from Toy Story. So your guide to the journey is the ominous professor, and there are shadow beings, dark walkways, and apparently that big baby head from Toy Story. And that's just creepy enough in itself. So they also have people in costumes just like a haunted house.
Hi!
And in this creepy take, the Mad Hatter is in his own personal asylum.
There's the guy just standing there.
Yeah. Just show the clip of the baby head again, that's all you need. On to number 5, I Corsari. So this ride in Gardaland in Italy is a large boat ride with scenes and drops and animatronics. And yes, animatronics. Just like this one. It is a pig that is absolutely jacked, and it's having its neck pulled off nearly by a child. So the pig kind of looks like a human in a pig skin suit. It's just not lifelike enough, but like enough that it's just it's uncanny valley, you know? It's ugh. The audio of the ride includes distant shrieking screams of children, creepy music, and all kinds of conversations. So I just feel like we know what we're in for. This dragon-like thing has the face of a person, and I feel like the ride operators have it pointed down because they know it's just not fit for human eyes, much less a child. And hopefully there aren't kids on this ride because they have people hanging from the ceiling as props. As in death, like hung. This one just has creep hitting on all different levels. The face on a dragon, people hanging, creepy music, that weird pig, I can't. But let's move on to number 4 with one I think we all know. It's A Small World. And yes, we know this, you know it would make the list. It's a small world ride at Disneyland. It's a creepy little world, in my opinion. Many people say it's the song itself that is just a source of fear on the ride because it just keeps repeating and it's just too cheery. Yeah. Unnerving, repetitive, feels like it's hiding something, all that jazz. But also, look at the dolls. There are figurines with 1 or 2 predetermined movements, and they look too fake to be real, but also lifelike enough to be unnerving. So, for example, this little Fisher. So it's just swinging up and down trying to get that walrus to do a trick, and it's just taking the realistic part out of life and leaving us with robots that are meant to feel wholesome, and it just feels fake, you know? And a bit creepy. Maybe I'm just creeped out by animatronics too much, I don't know. So let's move on to number 3, It's a Small World knockoff. So this knockoff It's a Small World is in Suzhou Amusement Land in China. So it's another slow-moving boat ride like a few others on this list. The music they play is distorted and creepy, and the dolls are worse. So in this one, the dolls look as if they are decaying or as if they are zombified dolls. Also, their eyes are uncomfortably wide, and the dolls, any of the animals, anything, they just look scared. They also have bags under their eyes as if they are being like overworked, and also a bunch of their arms are just reaching out to riders as if asking them for help. So the person who posted the video themselves said that the ride smelled like dead carcasses too. And also, just look at the bunny children. Try to tell me that doesn't give off some weird vibes. Yeah? Also, last thing I'll point out, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles make an appearance on this ride. For what reason? I'm not sure, but I'm guessing to protect us from the others. Moving on to number 2, Tower of Terror. So the Tower of Terror at Disney World is aimed to be a bit of a scary ride already, and yeah, I would say it works for me, honestly. And yes, there are the ghosts that are planned during the ride, but there is a rumor of a real ghost, the ghostly bellhop. So all of the cast members that work there are bellhops for the hotel. The story goes that one of the bellhops, or cast members, loading in the guests dropped dead on the spot as he was letting them onto a platform. He was loading Platform D, also known as Platform Delta, and is said to haunt the platform on the ride. When cast members have to ride the ride at the end of the night to make sure it runs as it should, they individually ride on platforms A, B, and C, but ride on Delta altogether. Lights would flicker on and off, there could be technical errors, and the cast members would see a figure out of the corner of their eye. Riding together makes them feel a little less creeped out. And so who knows if that is true, and honestly the ride is already scary enough on its own for me. Yes, can children go on it? But I am afraid. Lastly, at number 1, we have Pirates of the Caribbean, and I need to disclose for this one, I can't handle those skeletons. I just die looking at them. So for this one, I don't care what you think. I can't deal with the skeletons. I couldn't watch the movies when I was younger. I was terrified. So no, I will not go on this ride. There's no way in Sam Heck you couldn't get me in line. If you somehow did, I would bail last minute, say I felt sick, and after you finish the ride, you would see me at the end holding a basket of fries and living my best life. That's just how it goes. But let's talk about the ride. There's the creepy Captain Animatronic and someone being dunked and drowned in a well. Captain Jack himself just looks creepy, just swaying side to side. Just all of the animatronics are hitting that uncanny valley for me and really off-putting. Plus the skeletons. I cannot. Okay?
Starting us off at number 10 are the cables. So this one took place at Six Flags Kentucky Kingdom on the ride dubbed the Superman Tower of Pride. A young girl was on the ride with a few friends, and as it was getting to the top, the group had a cable snap, looked up and saw a bunch of cables coming towards them left, right and center. The cables started whipping around, injuring the group's faces, and this was when the ride was only 20 feet off the ground. And I feel like I don't know how no one was like, oh, maybe something's wrong with the ride. At that point, no one thought to stop the ride, and so they started being taken higher, and that was when the black smoke and smell of burnt rubber started kicking in. And on a roller coaster, that's just not a good look. It's not a good sign. The girls kept shouting to stop the ride as the cables kept hitting them, even wrapping around their necks at some points. When the girls finally landed on ground, the smell of burning flesh was just overpowering. Turns out one of the girls' feet had been severed off completely, and they managed to reattach her right foot, but her full left leg had to be amputated, and the ride is very much so in operation till this day. Where do these cables come from? How are they falling from the sky and just severing people's feet off? No. Coming in at number 9 is the Texas Giant. Now this ride is located at the Six Flags in Arlington, Texas, and it's this huge hybrid roller coaster that mixes wooden architecture and steel engineering together. Another Six Flags story. Should I be worried? I've never been. Should I just not go? Now the ride drops 14 stories at a 79-degree drop and reaches speeds of 65 miles per hour. So back in July of 2013, a 52-year-old guest at the park decided to go on the ride, but during its descent she was thrown 75 feet from the ride. Can you imagine? I would actually Now on her way down she hit a metal support beam and landed on a metal roof, and then obviously died from her injuries. The ride was shut down immediately after, but reopened after internal investigations found no mechanical issues within the ride whatsoever. The park settled a lawsuit with the woman's family worth approximately $1 million. You know those dreams you have when you're like falling and then you suddenly wake up? Just imagine it's not a bloody dream and you're falling off a roller coaster to your death. At number 8 we have the Trio. Kings Island Amusement Park in Ohio opened up back in 1972 and is still in operation till this day. Other than the amusement park, the island also has a cemetery on it in which a little girl was buried after dying at some point in the 1800s. This girl, dubbed Tram Girl or Missouri Jane, her ghost is often seen in and around the Whitewater Canyon ride, just doing, ghostly things, like giggling, splashing water on people who aren't even near the ride. and so forth. Now, Racer Boy is another ghost seen around the shooting star track at Coney Island. His spirit came with some of the ride's cars when they were relocated to Kings Island, and looks-wise he's just a little boy wearing a white suit. Not very harmful, he's not that dangerous. Last but not least is John Harter, aka Tower John, a young man who fell to his death in 1983 whilst climbing the Eiffel Tower at the entrance of the park. How true to size was this Eiffel Tower that this man died after climbing it? I thought it would just be like one of those mini ones. Clearly not. Filling our number 7 slot is the Haunted Castle. So this one's located at the Six Flags Great Adventure amusement park in Jackson, New Jersey. Another Six Flags, that's 3 already. I'm worried. I'm not going. Now, guests at the park have reported seeing teenagers wearing clothes from the 80s and 90s sitting around the park, but mostly around the Haunted Castle attraction. The teens who aren't real guests are apparently from an accident that took place at the ride back in 1984. 8 teenagers ended up getting trapped inside the ride and died in a resulting fire. Firefighters responding to the scene said they couldn't tell the real human bones from the prop skeletons, which is just a horrific thought. Like, can you imagine? That's like my visceral reaction, you know, when there's just like a chill and you're like, ugh. Now at number 6 is Drop Zone. I love rides like this where it takes you really high up and then basically drops you, making you free fall. It gives me major anxiety in my stomach, but they're so fun still, so I'm just like, whatever, deal with it, it'll be over in 2 seconds. Either way, this ride's located at California's Great America, and the Drop Zone did not end well for 12-year-old Joshua Smurfat. Joshua was disabled both mentally and physically, but that wouldn't have prevented him from riding safely. Each person was locked in by a shoulder harness, yet somehow on the 224-foot drop down, Joshua slipped out of the harness and fell off the ride, dying instantly. Oh, that gave me anxiety just thinking about that. His mom filed a lawsuit claiming you don't go to an amusement park and leave without your child. You don't leave without your child and then have to plan their funeral. Despite heavy investigation, no one could figure out what caused the accident or how he slipped out of the harness, but the ride is still very much in operation. Whenever I'm on that ride at Wonderland, I'm always like making sure, I'm like checking, I'm like, am I in? Am I in? Am I in? I even make sure like the clerk's like, am I in? Am I good? Not taking any chances, honey. Coming in at number 5 is Mrs. Muller. Muller's military horse was the intricate carousel horse that was carved in 1917 by Daniel Muller. The horse was meant to showcase his interest in pre-World War II cavalry mounts, but it's actually known for being the only haunted carousel horse in history. The story goes like this. Apparently after seeing the completed creation, Mrs. Muller fell in love with it, so much so that even after she died, her ghost returned to Cedar Point Carousel just to ride it. She was so infatuated with the horse that her ghost makes sure that no one else can photograph the horse or fall in love with it. She's been seen countless times riding the haunted steed, and that's a sentence I never thought I'd say. At number 4 is Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Dubbed the happiest place on earth, we never really hear of anything going wrong at Disneyland, but things do go wrong, my friends. Back in September of 2003, one man died while 11 others were injured while riding the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which I mean isn't even the most adrenaline-inducing rides, but it's one of those filler ones that you just have to go on when you're like waiting in between the better rides, you know what I mean? You guys know what I mean. Either way, during the ride, the open passenger train cars somehow separated from each other and the coaster completely came off its tracks. Riders were trapped while emergency responders were trying to save them, and later investigation concluded that the staff hadn't followed the proper maintenance procedures, and that's why the accident occurred to begin with. You can't sleep on maintenance procedures, you guys. Not at a theme park. Have we not seen Final Destination 3? Filling our number 3 slot is Roller Coaster, and as anticlimactic as that title is, that's exactly what the ride is called. Located at the Lagoon Amusement Park in Utah, the ride's been the site of many tragic accidents. In 1999, a 13-year-old rider stood up in the car as soon as it crested a hill and then fell forward onto the tracks. She was then run over by 2 other cars before falling through the tracks 35 feet to the ground. Earlier in 1934, a 20-year-old was also killed while trying to stand up during the ride, which I don't even know why they were trying to do that. Like, do they not tell you that beforehand? Like, don't try and stand up on the ride, people. And I mean, despite that, you can still ride the roller coaster today. I would just advise to, you know, not stand up. How can you even stand up when they've like harnessed you in? I can barely even breathe at that point, let alone stand up. Now at number 2 is Backward Roll. The Wildcat was a roller coaster located at Bell's Amusement Park in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it was April 1997 when the unthinkable happened. The amusement park was extra packed during that period because of a 25-cent ride promotion, and so every ride was basically full every single time. The Wildcat coasters were being pulled to the highest point of the track, but instead of cresting over the top and going over it, it started going backwards at a rapid pace and colliding with the coaster that was waiting. And can you imagine the momentum it would have hit the other coaster, like going all the way? Oh, gotta do the momentum calculations. Now, a 14-year-old boy died and 6 others were badly injured, and because of the promotion, so many people saw the accident take place. The ride was disassembled but then relocated to an amusement park in Maryland and called Avalanche. It's like the roller coaster was like, I never killed anyone, new name, who dis? And finally, at number 1 is the beheading, which I really never thought I'd want to talk about in regards to a roller coaster, but here we are. Now this one is Final Destination 3 level I swear to God. So back in 2016 at the Schlitterbahn water park in Kansas City, 10-year-old Caleb Schwab was chuffed to be finally riding the Verrückt, German for insane. I googled that. The 168-foot tall water slide was Guinness certified as the tallest water slide in the world, but honestly from pictures it looks really shoddily made. The ride plummets down like 17 stories in seconds, going at 70 miles per hour, but this ride should have never even opened. Even during test rides, most of the sandbag dummies became airborne, yet they still somehow swept that under the rug and went through with the ride. While Caleb and 2 other riders were going down in the raft, it became airborne towards the end, causing him to hit his head on one of the metal rods holding the safety net in place above him, obviously leading to decapitation. The water park's owner and the slide's designer were charged criminally for death, yet the water slide continued to be operational for a full 2 years after the accident before being dismantled for good. Starting us off with number 10 is the Roger Rabbit cartoon spin. So back in September of 2000, Brandon Zucker was 4 years old when he fell from the Roger Rabbit cartoon spin ride at Disneyland. Brandon was dragged under the car, causing severe internal injuries, brain damage, and cardiac arrest. In a horrific turn of events, he was stuck under the car for minutes, where his diaphragm was ruptured, his liver and spleen was torn, his left lung had collapsed, and he fractured his pelvis. The weirdest part was that the ride operator called his own supervisor before calling 911. Sus, very sus. As you can imagine, he was in the ICU and was in a drug-induced coma for weeks, and after the incident, Disney ensured his medical care would be covered for the rest of his life, but he sadly ended up dying in 2009. And Disneyland, on the other hand, had no problem closing down the ride but then opening it back up in 2001 after installing bumpers. Which, I mean, is that fully gonna prevent death? Who really knows? Coming in at number 9 is Tangled. This one is horrific, honestly. I saw the after picture of the victim and I was like, oh my god. So back in May of 2016, 11-year-old Elizabeth Gilrath was at a carnival in Omaha and she was about to ride on the infamous Spinning King's Crown ride. But as the ride started, and that ride is basically like a cylinder that you stand in and it goes round and round. There's one at Wonderland in Toronto, I've been on it, it's quite fun. But anyway, as the ride started, her long hair somehow got tangled into the ride's mechanisms and her hair started getting ripped out from her head as she got flung around. Despite witnesses and people on the ride yelling for the ride operator to stop the ride, they were seen running from the ride either to get help or save their ass, I'm not really sure. A bystander eventually physically stopped the ride, but Elizabeth was in really bad condition by then, and I mean, the ride had already been going on for 10 minutes, so that was a lot of ripping and being flung around. The ride had ripped out parts of her scalp as well, and when she got to the hospital, she had already suffered critical muscle damage to her face. She couldn't speak, communicate, or even open her eyes. But no one even knows how her hair got stuck in the mechanism and the ride is still open. But if you're gonna ride it, maybe tie up your hair. At number 8 we have the Roaring Rapids. Now this ride, located at the Six Flags in Texas, was a site of a major accident back in 1999. One raft was carrying 12 people at the time it completely flipped over in 4 feet of water. The flip trapped many of the passengers underwater, one of which was a 28-year-old woman called Valeria Cartwright, who actually ended up drowning and passing away. 10 other people were also seriously hurt, yet the ride is all shits and giggles right now, like it never happened and like it could never happen again. Which it could. I feel like there's been so many rapid accidents that I've read about while researching for this video. It's not a joke. It is a fun ride though, I have to admit. I try to go on it every time. Filling our number 7 slot is the Rolo Coaster. So back in August of 2016 at the Idlewild and Soak Zone amusement park, 3-year-old Declan McLean was super excited to ride the Rolo Coaster. When the ride rounded its highest point, Declan was ejected from the coaster, falling 10 feet and landing near a fence. He sustained a head injury and spent 2 months in the hospital, but there have been many possible factors discussed as to how this even happened. Firstly, Declan switched seats and went to sit next to his brother when he should have been sitting next to an adult. The ride was also 79 years old and had no secondary restraints. The roller coaster was closed down for 2 years before reopening once again. So I mean, ride at your own risk. Do sit next to an adult if you are small like Declan. I used to get so pissed when I was small and I was too short to ride any of the rides. That really annoyed me because I was like, I'm big, I can do it, just let me on it. Now at number 6 is the Ferris wheel, which I thought was arguably one of the least dangerous rides you could go on, but clearly I was wrong. Back in June of 2011, 11-year-old Abaya Jones was riding the Ferris wheel at Marina's Landing Pier located in Wildwood, New Jersey. In some freak accident, Jones fell off her carriage and to her death, and the cause of that is still unknown 9 years later. It was the only fatality or even accident ever recorded on the ride, and none have happened since either, since it's still in operation. How do you fall off a Ferris wheel? Like maybe she was leaning over the edge and just kind of tipped over, I feel like that's probably what happened. Coming in at number 5 is the Treetop Twister. So back in 2001, the Treetop Twister was a new ride at the Lightwater Valley theme park in North Yorkshire. The ride spins and basically takes you through a bunch of twists and turns, and it was only a month old before a major malfunction occurred. 2 carriages collided with one another, causing a 20-year-old university student to sustain serious spinal and head injuries. She was rushed to the hospital but did not make it, and 3 other riders were badly injured as well. Apparently it was due to the worn out wheels, faulty wiring, and actions of the operator that caused the collision, but I mean, how could they be so worn out if they were only a month old? Now despite that accident, the ride is still open till this day. Will I be riding it? No. Do I recommend you guys riding it? No. At number 4 are the teacups. Forget what I said about the Ferris wheel being the least dangerous ride, I think it's definitely the teacup one. Either way, back in April of 2015, a 51-year-old man was sitting in the fairground teacup ride in Burley, England. But the thing is, the ride wasn't even in operation, he was just sitting in it, and the cup started getting towed on a trailer to another location, and the movement of that caused him to fall out of the teacup and sustain critical head injuries. An off-duty nurse saw him lying on the ground and tried giving him CPR on the scene, but by the time he got to the hospital, his conditioning was life-threatening and he did not survive. Why was he in the teacup if it was not even in operation at the time? Maybe he was just relaxing, just thought he'd sit in the teacup. Filling our number 3 slot is the Tower of Terror. Now I've actually never tried the Tower of Terror. Even when I went to Disneyland as a kid, I just don't remember it. If you haven't been on it, it's essentially like a drop zone sort of ride, but you don't just go down, you go up as well. And this ride is really just not for us mere humans, honestly. After reading everything I have about this ride, it's just not for us. Not built for us. In 2005, a 16-year-old British tourist had a stroke and then a heart attack after riding the Florida version. In 2010, a 20-year-old man fell 25 feet at the California version but somehow survived, and finally, a year later in 2011, a 12-year-old Argentinian boy became paralyzed from the neck down after riding the Paris version. The California one has been closed down since, but the rest haven't, so I mean, go at your own risk. Now at number 2 is the Batman. You already know I'm a DC girl, I'm not a Marvel girl, however this is a Batman that I very much cannot get behind. So this one took place at Six Flags in Georgia back in June of 2008. A 17-year-old boy jumped 2 fences that clearly said do not enter because he was trying to get his hat that he had lost on one of the rides. Just let it go, bro, get a new hat. We're not doing the risk. As he got it and stood up, the Batman ride came at him full throttle and the bottom part of it straight up decapitated this boy. And I mean, the ride is still in operation since it was a human error, not a mechanical one, but I mean, they do have those signs up for a reason. You guys do not venture into the just greenery area because you will get decapitated. Finally, at number 1 is the Cyclone. The Coney Island Cyclone at Luna Park in New York City has been problematic for years and years now, yet it's still in operation and doing better than ever. Firstly, the ride travels at 60 miles per hour, and since its opening in 1927, 3 people have died after riding it. In 1985, a 29-year-old man stood up on the ride and was killed when his head was hit with a crossbeam. Why are people standing up on rides? I don't get that. Like, don't they specifically specifically tell you to just sit down and not stand up or move in your seats? Either way, a year later, another man was also killed after he fell off the roller coaster, and once a maintenance worker at the park was sitting at the back of the ride just chilling, and he was seen standing up right before the ride's first descent, and so he fell 30 feet, landed on a crossbeam, and died instantly. Who is standing up on rides? I don't get it.